Welcome back to the Restoring Darkness podcast. On today's show, it's Mark and I's honor to speak to Rushil Kukreja. Rushil is a junior at TJHSST. I'm sure that's a high school. With that means something, but and the founder and president of Princia, the only student-run nonprofit dedicated to solving light pollution. This is why Mark and I already like Rushil. Leading over 250 advocates across 6 continents. He has spoken at the United Nations General Assembly, earned a grant from Cornell University, and is working with lawmakers in 8 states, advocating for policy changes to mitigate light pollution's environmental and health impacts. As an astrophysics researcher and aerospace innovator, Rushil combines scientific expertise with advocacy to drive sustainable lighting solutions worldwide. We're going to have some pictures that he's taken up on there's a link to them on the website, along with his social media handles on Instagram, LinkedIn, X. You can visit his website at princia.org, and he is the founder and president. Mark, before we get into this really exciting conversation with Rushil, we like to see young advocates bring a lot of energy to movements, that us old guys can't. But before we get into that, I got to know what's happening with soft lights, Mark. Give us a soft lights update.
You bet, Michael. Oh, we have been super busy on the Bay Lights 360 project. So in San Francisco, they are attempting to install 50,000 LEDs across a 1.8-mile span of the San Francisco Bay Bridge without any environmental review. In California, we have a law called the California Environmental Quality Act. It requires projects such as these to do an environmental assessment, often quite large, to assess the impacts on the environment. In this case, the state agencies involved include the California Department of Transportation and a small agency with about 5 people or so called the Bay Area Toll Authority. During our efforts to get them to comply with the law, they have already started the project, by the way, in December. They started construction on the project. And I filed a lawsuit in December. So for the past 2 months, we have uncovered, I am now alleging fraud. They have at least a half a dozen violations of statutes, and the effort that they went through to hide who's in charge of the project and to carry this out without public input, without environmental review is absolutely astonishing. So it's been a tremendous amount of work. I just met with a lawyer for Caltrans today, and they said, well, we disagree with your position. So that
Of
lawsuit
course
is
they do.
continuing.
Of course
Of
they
course.
disagree. Yeah. We're all friends here. We're going to be polite in the courtroom, right? And
Yeah.
that's what one things I really love about the legal process is like the enforcement of decorum. I don't know how it is in the United States, but when you're in front of a judge in Canada, whether it's a settlement conference or you're in court, or everybody has to behave politely. And then when you have all the ammo like a Mark Baker, these guys are in big trouble in that environment where they can't bully you, where they can try to out lawyer you and pull shenanigans or whatever, but the facts are going to emerge. And that's what's beautiful about, the law, the rule of law and the justice system. A lot of people complain about it, Mark, but I think in my experience, it works pretty good. And so I'm very proud of what you're doing there. We're entering an age of audit, Mark. We're entering a time where people are saying, like, whether you love hate or Trump hate, whatever it is, the derangement syndrome goes both ways with that guy. But whatever it is, we're entering a phase where people want to see what the heck is going on. And Mark Baker is leading that charge in this movement, and I appreciate you, brother.
Thank you, Michael.
Rochelle, welcome to the Restoring Darkness podcast.
Thank you.
First of all, how old are you?
I'm 15.
15. I love it. I love it.
Yes.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about how you organized 250 advocates across 6 continents, because we can't even hurt a cat with this Restoring Darkness podcast.
Great. Yeah. So essentially, kind of just to explain how I started off with Princia and how I actually got interested in light pollution in the first place. Um, I've always loved astronomy. I want to be an astrophysicist when I grow up, and so I always liked like using telescopes to look at the stars. Um, but living in Northern Virginia, it's really difficult to do that um, because of light pollution. And so when I realized this, I started to find out that light pollution is this huge problem that people aren't really talking about. And then, so during the pandemic, my aunt is actually a nurse who works kind of nighttime shifts, and she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And after researching, what I found out is that this was something that was actually prevalent across nighttime workers, because of the circadian rhythms that are disrupted due to light pollution. And it made me realize that light pollution isn't just an issue that's like affecting our environment, but it's something that affects health, it affects a wide variety of domains. And that's what kind of led me to actually create Princia in the first place. And then in terms of actually kind of expanding the organization, getting other students, what I found out was when I told people, especially like young students who realize that there's a lot of problems with our world that people really aren't focusing on. And when I kind of gathered these, when I started spreading the message about light pollution, and gave people this opportunity to join Princia and join our organization to actually create a difference on the world, we got a lot of people who were interested in it. And eventually, as I said, we scaled to 250 people on all six continents, other than Antarctica.
And the speaking, I know you're really nervous being on the Restoring Darkness podcast with Mark Baker. I'm always nervous with Mark. But what was it like speaking to the United Nations General Assembly?
Right. Yeah. It was definitely a huge step, kind of talking in front of a lot of people, a huge amount of people, a huge amount of important people as well, about an issue that I care so deeply about. But I think it was definitely a great stepping stone, both for like the organization as well as myself personally. Um, so I was a little nervous going in, but it turned out to be a great opportunity.
Before I throw it over to Mark, the what was the feedback like? Did any of the delegates there come up to you after? Was there some conversations with? Because when you're at the United Nations, those are like top diplomats from all the countries in the world. Like being the ambassador to the United Nations is a top job in every country in the world. And so you're meeting very, very high level people. Did you get to speak with them
Mhm.
after? Did they have specific questions for you? What was it like?
Yeah, so there were a lot of people from across the world for sure. And a few of them did kind of approach me to kind of learn more about light pollution, learn more about what was actually happening. Um, and I definitely like I gave them kind of my spiel about the issue. And there were a lot of people who were very genuinely interested about light pollution and about what Princia has done. Um, so yeah, there was overwhelming interest from across the aisle.
Wow.
Rushil, so did they, anybody commit anything to you, say concrete, or was it good job, thanks for that, we'll be in touch or something like that? Did you feel any sense of a concrete commitment?
Yeah, so unfortunately, a lot of times with like bureaucracy, it's always not like that quick at getting things done. And so like at that event, at least we didn't really get any concrete commitment of any country or any person who wanted to or who was willing to make an action at that time. But kind of the other stuff that Princia has done, we have been kind of speaking with legislators in within the United States, across 8 different states, and we have legislators in a couple states who are willing and working to get something done on light pollution. And although it might not go as far as we would hope, it is a right step. It is a step in the right direction.
The issue of cancer is a really big deal. So, in the news, they're starting to say that not only are older people developing this cancer, but there's this anomaly in the data that's showing that even young people are developing cancer that they weren't before. And when I read the news media, it's always seems to be a mystery. We don't know why. The doctors say, well, it's something, it could be something in our environment. And there are lots of environmental factors. PFAS, right? That's a chemical, forever chemical. That could be causing a problem. Our diet could be causing a problem. Stresses. But I, as an activist in the light pollution area, I always think light pollution. Light pollution is increasing the risk of cancer. What have you discovered about the connection between light pollution and cancer risk?
Yeah, so we've done a lot of research kind of on this issue, especially since this was kind of what led me to start the organization. And there's actually a study done by the NIH which found that breast cancer is actually associated with light pollution. And it was a study done in over 100 countries across the world. And light pollution actually increases the risk of getting breast cancer by 30 to 50%. Um, and so that's a huge risk factor that is being increased. And it's not just breast cancer that it affects, but also things like diabetes, depression, anxiety, and so a huge variety of diseases. And at the same time as there's these new studies popping up about the huge health implications, really a lot of people still don't know what light pollution even is. And so that's something that I think that is very important to get the message out about it.
Yeah, they need to know that light pollution is pollution. And what
Right.
I learned from Mark Baker is that actually I used to say in the beginning it's not a metaphor, but I didn't know the reason why. And on this journey with Mark, we've starting to come up with specifics as to how that pollution is toxic and how it affects people. We've had a couple people not wanting to use the word toxic because it's time sensitive and this kind of thing, and they want to avoid some of those terms. But we don't care to avoid them. We just say it's toxic. Um, but when, specifically describe to me, if you can, how light pollution caused your aunt's cancer.
Yeah. So obviously it's not like something that's definitive that that's what caused it. But essentially what happens with light pollution is it disrupts the circadian rhythms of the brain, especially with people who work during the night and not during the day. They're exposed to bright amounts of light, and very, very blue tones of light. During times where their body isn't psychologically and physically prepared for that light. And that essentially affects their circadian rhythm, which increases the risk of these different diseases, including cancer.
So, Mark, I want to send this over to you to comment on that. Do you have any further specifics to add to that? Because I think we want to kind of drill down into this a little bit. I don't know if we have the answer here right now in the show. We have opinions, but Mark, what's your take?
Yeah, it's a little tricky without having the studies, but on the softlights.org website, we have a very long list of these studies that come out on a regular basis every month, every couple of weeks, confirming what Rushil just told the audience that the light pollution doesn't directly cause the disease, but it interferes with our processes, and especially this suppressing the melatonin hormone. And so, because during the night all these repair actions are supposed to occur, it's not occurring because the melatonin hormone is not active, right? It's being suppressed. So the increases, they've done the nurses study, was it Harvard, was one of the first, and they showed this increased risk for people working at the night shift. But then since then, in the last couple of years, there have been large studies, like 80,000 people study, showing these risks have increased across a wide range of people. So the evidence is really overwhelming. And then the disease risk is breast cancer, prostate cancer, um, heart disease, diabetes risk, obesity, um, even autism, mood disorders, uh,
It's connected to
and
everything. It's connected to
early
everything.
mortality.
Yes.
Yeah. You know what early mortality is?
People
That's
dying
you
young.
die.
Yeah.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this light pollution is reducing the length of our lives.
You almost want to say smoke them if you got them. But like the obvious solution, which is impossible, Rachel, the obvious solution is to go back to
Mhm.
being a diurnal species, right? So we come out and
Yeah.
we say, listen, we're not having night shifts at Walmart anymore. Gas stations are not open 24 hours unless they're on a highway. We come out, but that will only fix part of the problem. The other side of the problem, Rochelle, is better lighting for these folks. And we're actually, especially in places like Walmart, Mark, or gas stations, these people are just getting hammered with that blue light like crazy. And there has to be a mitigation that's involved because there's no way we're going to we're going to go back. The chances of us taking the diurnal route, going back to being a diurnal species, is almost. I think there's a better chance of seeing the stars in the Milky Way in San Francisco in 10 years than there is to think of our society going diurnal and saying no more night working unless unless you're a first responder or something like that. But so how do we, in your opinion, in your research, what you know, and remember you're talking to two pretty good experts here, subject matter experts, what's the solution to this problem from the lighting industry? Because the lighting industry has to solve this problem. What's your proposed solution, Rochelle, if you have one?
Right. I mean, first of all, as you said, like even going diurnal doesn't solve the whole problem because the impacts aren't just on humans, it's on the entire environment. On, for example, like 600 million birds are killed each and every year because of light pollution. And so definitely that doesn't solve the problem. What the lighting industry can do, and on top of the lighting industry, everyone who installs lights, so homeowners, corporations with big buildings, even governments that have these different buildings, schools, libraries, offices. So what they can do is they can try to shield their lighting. So ensuring that the lighting is only being directed where lighting is actually necessary, and turning off any unnecessary lights across the board. And then also switching these LED lights to warmer colors, or something that doesn't kind of cause as much harm as the bright blue lights cause.
You know, Mark, it just occurred to me. You know, humans when they're inside of a tall tower, let's say you're a big shooter and your office is on the 65th floor of the First Canadian Place down in Toronto, and you're like a big banker, right? They have these automatic shades that come down over the window that block the sunlight coming in. We need those for the nighttime. We need those shades coming down at night. If you have to work at night and it's a data center or something, it's 24/7 up there. You gotta that protection goes both ways, buddy. It goes for you during the day with the sunshine, and it goes for the birds at night that are smashing into those towers and dead on the ground all over the place the next day on a, because they're driving themselves into that light pollution. We need the shading on the inside of buildings. It just occurred to me, Mark, right now. I think that would have a huge impact, and a lot of these buildings already have the ability to do that.
Michael, that's a great idea. I'm glad you brought it up because when we watch TV news, or if you watch sports, they'll often show the big cities, or even if you just go on the internet and look at the photographs. And the big cities have these tall towers, right? And they all have these windows, and it's nighttime, and 80% of them are lit up. That's pollution. And if those shades you were talking about were required in those large buildings, then that would be a significant reduction of pollution in the city. And what it would do would be to get the city to start thinking about the pollution. Because what we've seen in the last just very few years is that these LED people are adding purple and green and orange strips to everywhere,
Yeah,
right?
it's gross.
So, Rashid, so yeah, right. Rashid, have you seen this? You live in a small town or a big town? Have you seen what I'm talking about? That these LEDs are just showing up like on the edges of every building.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen that. And also to add on to kind of the blind solution, one of the things that I've tried to do is kind of bring like an angle of innovation and new technology into this. So one of the things I actually did as part of my science fair project was to create a window that would essentially it can automatically turn opaque. So right now it's still in like the prototype phase. It doesn't turn like fully opaque. It's more like around 90%. And it's not fully transparent. It's more like 80% transparent. But if that's effectively implemented, that could revolutionize kind of how buildings do this, where they just install a window, and once the window detects that there's more light coming from inside compared to outside, it transitions to that opaque state. And that would essentially reduce all light pollution that's coming out of inside the building.
The problem with new technology on glazing for buildings is all the buildings we have right now are already built. So
Right.
the
Yes.
so that would be like a new construction building code play, which I think would be great. But
Mm.
a lot of people, when they're coming up with these ideas, they're not thinking about how do you retrofit the First Canadian Place windows. That's a massive, massive, massive job. But and so I think that's a good new construction idea to develop the smart windows or whatever that would change their reflectivity and their whatever transparency. But right now, Mark, these people already have these shades. They're already there. Like
Yeah.
they're already there, guys. Like all these buildings have these automated. They push a button and the whole thing is
Is
shaded.
that right?
Yeah, most of them
Oh,
have it.
so all they need to do is like implement either a policy or something that would say before you go home at night, you got to push the button, or when the janitor comes in, it would be part of their procedure to push the button to close
I
all
think
those?
I think it's just a computer program that runs it. So when the like and it wouldn't be a perfect solution because a lot of them have like pinholes in them and stuff like that, but it would probably reduce the light pollution by like 50, 40, 50, 60%, something like that. And you could do that right now. And that would be probably all the major towers in Toronto. All of them would have that. And that would be something on their building control system that they could program to shield if the lights are still on in this space, or just all the shading goes down at night when the sunrise to sunset, buddy. The shading goes down. You don't get to see the beautiful vista of Toronto from your office.
It is a little bit confusing when you see these. It's nighttime, it's 9 o'clock at night or something. I'm pretty sure all those people are not working in the office. The lights are on and nobody's there.
I'll tell you this: I stayed at a hotel, the X Hotel in Toronto, with my wife. We went to this um, this is part of the problem. We went to this Gatsby party, so I dressed up like one of those guys from what's that show called that the Peaky Blinders. I actually looked like one of those Peaky Blinders guys when I dressed up. Like it was pretty good. It was a good outfit. And my wife dressed up in like this flapper outfit from the 20s. And so we went to this party. We came back to the hotel at night, and they had this huge window that faced the city of Toronto. It looked beautiful. I have to say, the light pollution did look really nice. I can see why people want to do it. But we could definitely say you got to shut those shades 2 hours after sunset. Like that would work. You get it for 2 hours. It's a compromise. We're willing to compromise with you folks out there that love light pollution, right? 2 hours after sunset, 3 hours after sunset, shut it down and get the lights off if there's no one there. That's just responsible stewardship. That has nothing to do with environmentalism. That's stewardship and being a good citizen.
I want to ask Rushil a question about this whole thing, responsibility.
Mm.
Um, Rushil, one of the difficulties that people have with their neighbors purchasing an LED light, 4,000K or 5,000K, and it's got this big glare bomb. They approach their neighbor, and the neighbor says, I don't really care. That's what I want. I need it for safety. Have you ever tried to talk to a neighbor or a business or anybody about a situation like that? And what was their feedback?
Yeah, so I haven't personally kind of gone to an individual like homeowner business. What we have done is I know there's a lot of work being done at George Mason University, which is a local university, to kind of shut down their lights during the night or at least decrease the amount of
Reha.
lights they have. And so there are definitely people there who are really willing to who understand the impacts of light pollution and who want to work on it. But at the same time, there's always this like administrative barrier or it's not like one person who's controlling the show. There has to go through a lot of different steps, and so it's not something that can be done like very easily. And so it definitely takes like a lot of time to get that done, and a lot of people there they're concerned about, for example, safety on campus. Or even with homeowners, they're concerned about whether turning off their lights is going to affect the safety. But there's actually like studies that have shown that turning off these lights is going to make their homes or their campus even more safer compared to keeping these lights on because criminals don't really avoid the light. Like that's a false phenomenon that people believe in, but isn't actually true.
Rochelle's met
Michael,
has met Mr. Strawman. Mr.
it,
Strawman.
every time we have a guest on the show, it seems like when we bring up the issue of safety, the discovery has been the lights don't improve safety, right? Our
Lights are
guests say,
neither the cause nor the solution to crime. Okay, crime is a societal issue. It's got nothing to do with the lighting
Mhm.
industry or lighting. Mr. Strawman says you have to prove to me if I turn this light off and anything happens, it's your fault. That's Mr. Strawman's argument. The reality is that people. It's almost like it's better off handled, Mark, with an anonymous letter. Anonymous letter screws with people's heads. Okay, so Rochelle, if you got a light polluter, right? Don't go up front with them. Hit them with the anonymous letter and say we're your neighbors and we don't like your lights. You're kind of obnoxious, and they glare into everybody's room, and your house looks ridiculous. Did you talk to your wife about these lights? Because it's really embarrassing, and you just send it to them handwritten, and let them read it. And I guarantee you, those lights will be off the next day. I guarantee you. So
Michael, there was a story, and Rashil, there was a story that somebody posted on our group. at a marina on the East Coast, and they had installed an obnoxious 5,000K floodlight that blasted way past the harbor into people's houses. They they wrote and contacted the marina for 2 years, asking them to do something about it. No help, no response, nothing happened. So they finally said, okay. They called the radio station. Could you do a story on that? They did the story. The very next day, they got a call from the harbor. Oh, we're going to look into that for you.
Yeah, sometimes you need there's legal pressure and there's social pressure. There's the courts of law and there's the court of public opinion. And I'm starting to believe, Rushil, that the court of public opinion is more powerful and effective. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, definitely for a lot of businesses and just organizations in general, they have a huge priority on kind of making a profit and like making a profit for their shareholders. And so, if any damage to their public reputation is going to harm anything about like their business, it's going to decrease their share value, for example. And so, a huge method to kind of get businesses to take action on anything, including light pollution, is just as you said, just going to even like a local radio show and telling them about what's happening and getting that to create the societal pressure on the business.
You know, we saw a guy on, people don't even like to be added on LinkedIn posts, to be honest with you. I'll be, I'll be honest with you, like even that terrifies them. And so, yeah, there's a definitely, like I would consider you to be like the grassroots of this movement, Rochelle, and I'd like to applaud you on your work. Is there any final thoughts that you have for the Restoring Darkness audience?
I think just the main thing is that every individual can make a difference. It's not something where you have to rely on other people or other organizations who are working on it. But if you truly believe in this issue, then you can do work on your own, both in your own home and expanding to your community or your state or your country, to actually advocate for policies that are going to help solve this issue.
Well, folks, we've established it. Mark, we have the Greta Thunberg of light pollution. Rushil I'm going to try it again. Kureja, right? That's your last name is pronounced. Did I get it right? Rushil Kureja.
Yes.
Yeah. And his social media, he's on LinkedIn, he's on Instagram, he's on X. And if you don't know what X is, it used to be called Twitter for all you that are listening out there. Princia.org, that's Princia.org. And he's also shared some pictures with us. And so that'll all be on the Restoring Darkness podcast website. I'd like to thank all of you who have listened to this program today. And we've still, those announcements I've told you about, they're coming. It's just sometimes it takes a little bit of time for us to work through some of the different things that are involved in these announcements because it takes time. It might be another couple weeks. So all you listeners out there, we're going to make an announcement real soon. Thank you for listening. Bye for now.